Something unusual began to settle inside me, an ache like the pores before the skies break open. It wasn't loneliness exactly, but a stillness that felt new, almost fragile. An unfamiliar hush wrapped itself around my days, the kind of silence that seems to hum with something just about to happen. It appeared whenever my thoughts wandered toward him, this stranger who had entered my world without warning. Before, such ideas had seemed improbable, that someone could arrive without noise or chaos, without a dramatic entrance, and still rearrange everything I had left unspoken. But that's exactly what he did. Not like lightning, not like fire, but like a forgotten lullaby drifting down empty hallways, awakening emotions I had carefully buried under years of habit and quiet resignation. It began without drama. My car had been making strange noises again, the kind I had been pretending not to hear. But ignoring it hadn't helped, and now the sound was louder, more insistent. I finally gave in, fishing out the number someone in the neighborhood had given me. I didn't want anything complicated, just skill, honesty, and maybe a little kindness. He arrived at my door with no fanfare. "Armin," he said simply when I opened it, his voice even and unhurried. He was calm, steady, unreadable. His hands told his story more than his expression did, strong and capable, with years of work etched into the skin. His movements were deliberate, confident, the way someone works when they've been doing something their whole life. I watched from behind the curtain as he inspected the engine, rolled sleeves catching the fading light, brow furrowed in focus. Something about the way he moved made time feel slower. When I stepped outside to offer him a drink, our fingers brushed as I handed over the glass. Barely a second of contact, but it was enough. Something flickered between us, intangible yet present, stretching invisibly through the air. He mentioned replacement parts and promised to return the next day. I nodded, maybe too quickly. On impulse, before he could leave, I asked if he'd like tea. There was the briefest hesitation before his eyes warmed, and he agreed. We sat outside beneath the fading sunlight, sipping quietly. Strangers, yet somehow not. He spoke of his father, of learning to fix things from a young age, of the satisfaction of making something work again. His words were simple, but it was the rhythm of his voice, steady, grounding, that pulled me in. When he stood to leave, his tomorrow lingered in my mind like warmth that refused to fade. That night, I caught myself thinking about him more than I wanted to admit. I told myself it meant nothing, just a coincidence, a passing moment. But the next day he returned, punctual, focused, yet with an undercurrent of awareness between us. There were fewer words this time, but more glances. And the silences we shared didn't feel empty, they brimmed with things we weren't yet saying. When the work was done, I thanked him. Then, surprising myself, I asked, "Is stay for dinner?" Even Armin seemed caught off guard. In the kitchen, we moved around each other easily. I stirred while he chopped. We shared small stories, little fragments of ourselves, my daughter Melody's childhood, the way he still had his father's old tools. We laughed more than I expected. His attention was quiet but constant. He didn't rush me, didn't try to fill the spaces with unnecessary words. He just listened. And it felt deeper than anything I'd known in a long time. As the evening deepened, the light softened and the conversation faded into comfortable quiet. When he finally stood to leave, his goodbye was gentle, as though careful not to disturb whatever had begun between us. Over the next days, the excuses became thinner, sometimes the car, sometimes something he happened to be passing by for. Soon, there were no excuses at all. He would arrive without errands, without reason, just to be here. The couch began to remember the weight of his presence. The air between us was often filled with thoughtful silences. One evening, As the sun painted the sky in gold and the air smelled faintly of rain, he looked at me and asked, "Do you believe some people change everything?" "I do," I said softly. He nodded, eyes steady on mine. "Do you feel this?" I didn't answer aloud, but he seemed to know. Nothing needed to be declared. Stillness had become our language. Weeks passed. Mornings sometimes began with the coffee he brought. Nights often ended with the calm he carried into my space. Sometimes he'd bring food, other times music. Often, it was just the sound of the wind through the open window, the creak of the floor beneath our feet. It was enough. One evening, as we sat together, our hands brushed. It wasn't the touch that mattered, but the meaning behind it. His gaze dropped, then returned to mine, as if he were afraid to shatter the moment. "I'm not usually this open," he admitted quietly. "But this feels different." "I wasn't expecting you," I whispered. "But now, you feel impossible to unsee." He smiled faintly, almost sadly, then said, "I don't want to fix you. I just want to be here." I felt tears rise, not from sadness, but from recognition. We leaned forward until our foreheads met. Just that. No kiss. No rush. And somehow, it felt more powerful than anything else. Love, I've learned, doesn't always come like a fire. Sometimes it hums, steady, tender, unyielding in its quiet depth. Armin was like that hum. And I didn't want it to stop.